Thank you, Lindsay. Hi, everybody. I can see people are trickling in from the break. First of all, thank you for being here, braving the record-setting heat. It's been pretty cool indoors all day. And before we get started, I just want to ask a few questions of the audience from what I can see of you. The lights are blinding right now. How many of you out there are working in an agency? Can you just have a quick show of hands? Looks like the majority. How about in-house? In-house at okay, maybe a little less than half. How about neither of those things? Something else. Okay, interesting. Well, this presentation today, I think is going to be certainly relevant for all of you who are working in agencies, but also working in in-house teams. And I want to talk about what we see as a new model for transforming customer acquisition. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. First of all, what is this all about? I want to put this talk into the right type of a context and framework. Why is now the right time to be talking about this model? What is the model? What does this mean potentially for you in your career as a performance marketer? And what does it mean for the organization that you work in at large, either your agency or your clients' companies in particular? So what we're here to talk about is growth marketing. We're talking about acquisitions here. We are not talking about brand marketing. We're not talking about event marketing or life cycle marketing. We are talking about marketing that is designed to acquire customers who have a long and fruitful and profitable life with the company and a long relationship. And in particular, what I'll be referring to a lot throughout the presentation tends to be more on recurring revenue type of businesses as opposed to e-commerce. So think SaaS or think subscription-based businesses. And in particular, a SaaS business, and is anybody out there working for a SaaS company or has SaaS clients? Okay, great, then especially this is for you. A SaaS acquisition motion typically goes down one of two paths. Either you have what's called a product-led growth motion, where the product itself is at the center of the marketing and you want to get that product into the hands of users as quickly and easily as possible so that they can experience the product without sales. Or alternatively, you have a sales-led growth motion where you're trying to funnel leads, or in the case of SaaS, demo bookings to sales teams. And there it's more about B2B marketing and lead generation. We are talking about acquisitions either through product-led growth and through sales-led growth. And there's a problem, and you all know this problem, especially those who are working in SaaS, is that there is constantly rising pressure on acquisitions as the product scales, as the number of users scale. So your own success makes things harder and harder for you over time, because your job is to keep that tide rising, that number of users, active users, rising and rising and rising. But churn rates are churn rates, and churn rates are typically fairly constant. And those are leaks in the bucket, and those leaks are going to keep leaking. And at some point, acquisition marketing struggles to keep pace with the leaky bucket, with churn from the customer base. And we've also seen from other talks that there's a certain level of efficiency where incrementally, if you keep spending more and more, it doesn't really result in greater efficiencies. So you have both of those things working against you here. So this is tough. To make matters even worse, we know what's coming, and this is a big theme of we're going to be talked about in these 2 days. Cookies are going away. And by the way, these cookies don't look as good as the cookies that are here at this conference. I think those were amazing cookies, Lindsay. The food in general is great, isn't it, at this conference? Well, from what we know from Google, cookies are going to be going away in 2023, next year sometime. And I think what a lot of us don't fully appreciate, and what we've taken for granted for the better part of 2 decades, is that these cookies were really the essence of what was supplying that sweet, sweet ROAS for all of these years. And they're going to be sunsetting. And it's hard to imagine what's going to replace them. And Google has a solution called the Privacy Sandbox. And this solution has gone through different iterations of bird-named solutions, starting with the federated learning of cohorts. And we've heard also talk about things called turtle dove and sparrow and fledge. But will these birds fly? Can any of these solutions really take the place of the efficiency of third-party cookie tracking? Does anybody believe that out there? I have a hard time believing this right now. I think that Google is going to struggle to replace the ROAS efficiency of third-party cookies with any of these solutions. What that means is that there are going to be holes. There are going to be gaps in Google's data. And Google needs us to fill those gaps. And we need to fill those gaps with things like first-party data and more creative. That's the key. Don't rely on Google to solve this. Google needs us to help them solve this. Google needs data that it doesn't have. It needs your clients or your first-party data. Google needs more creative for testing. That's what's going to fill these holes. So here is the model that I would like to suggest, which is not a revolutionary new model because it contains elements of things that maybe you're already doing. But what I want to do is bring these elements together in a closer, more and better coordinated way. And that starts with automation and value-based bidding, which a lot of you are probably using right now very successfully. Data science, which is something that is mystical to a lot of us and typically has nothing to do with marketing. And finally, creative. And by creative, I mean performance creative. And historically, these three major aspects have been living apart from each other. Performance marketing and creative have typically even been split into different types of agencies. Data science has been a whole different discipline all unto itself. And what I'm arguing is that these three spheres need to merge together under a single roof or under a single team in order to achieve optimal acquisition marketing performance. Let's start with the first leg of this stool, which is value-based bidding. And how many of you out there are using value-based bidding pretty successfully right now in some of your accounts and campaigns? A lot of you, that's great. The goal for value-based bidding, as most of you probably know very well, is to move away from bidding on a cost basis towards bidding towards real value, towards real revenue value, not on a so-called target CPA. So what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to make SaaS marketing with recurring revenue streams look and act more like e-commerce marketing, where you know the value of the sale right then and there at the point of transaction. That means that we have to take future revenue streams of tomorrow and a year out, and we need to bring them back into the present. We want SaaS businesses to be able to bid target ROAS, just like e-commerce can do. Wouldn't that be great? Target CPA has been the primary bidding method for B2B lead gen for a long, long time, and it can still be very effective. And often this reflects the way that marketing is even set up, because most marketing teams have a primary KPI to deliver marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. But now, if we can reach into the CRM and pull back that revenue data, why shouldn't we be bidding towards value? If we can give those values to Google, why can't we aim Google at a bigger goal of generating value for the organization? So target CPA is flawed, and I do believe that B2B lead gen marketers should be generally trying to move from target CPA bidding to value-based bidding, which is either target ROAS or maximize conversion value. If you do have a CRM and you have access to the CRM, and if the sales team gives you the keys to that, well, typically what you want to do first with value-based bidding for lead gen is to deconstruct the sales funnel, starting from the point of sale and working your way backwards, so that not only do we have the value of the sale that's being captured and sent back to Google, but we also have the value of the opportunity. And then we have the value of the SQL. And then we even have the value of the MQL. And if there is historical data, and hopefully there is historical data that will tell you MQLs move to SQLs at roughly this percentage of probability. SQLs move to opportunities at this percentage. Opportunities are closed in one at this percentage of probability. That allows you to deconstruct the funnel and create unique values for every stage of that sales cycle inside the CRM. And that's the data that Google needs. Google doesn't need only the sale value, but it needs all those other values. The more signals and revenue signals that you can send back, the better. And once you get this set up, of course, the waiting is the hardest part, as they say. This is really an exercise in patience. And your clients or your boss or people in the organization need to realize that if you switch to value-based bidding, it won't bring immediate results, but that results could come in several days or maybe several weeks, perhaps even a couple of months. It depends a lot on the length of the conversion cycle. But once you import values, you first need to start from there and go through 3 conversion cycles according to Google. And a conversion cycle is the time from the ad click to the time where that user with that Google Click ID converts. 3 conversion cycles to let Google just start gathering the data in those new conversion columns, ingesting the data, making sense of it, and only then at conversion cycle 4 can you actually launch an experiment with value-based bidding. And then you need to give that experiment proper time. You probably need to go 2 more conversion cycles before you pass any form of judgment on that new campaign and make a decision to start moving budget if it's working. So that's 5 conversion cycles. This is an exercise in patience, and your clients need to understand and appreciate that this takes time, and this is very much a long-term approach. Now let's talk about what I think is probably the most exciting leg of the stool of this new model, which is bringing in a function that has never really been a part of marketing historically at all, and that is data science. The goal with data science is to train Google's value-based bidding using predicted customer lifetime value. So what we're going to talk about now is how to build a machine learning model, or how to help others build that model so that you all can create the most superior offline conversion event you could ever imagine. And that is true lifetime value, and it's predicted lifetime value. I can't really think of a better conversion event than that. In order to make this happen, there is one primary key prerequisite, which is that there is an understanding today of lifetime value in the organization, that you have been tracking this, or your clients have been tracking this, most likely with cohort analysis. And the most common form is time-based cohorts, where the new users are bucketed according to their acquisition date, and then they're followed over their lifetime to see how long they are retained and how much revenue is extracted from that cohort. And if you all have this as a starting point, that's great, because in order to predict lifetime value, we need to predict lifetime value against a known baseline of historic customer lifetime values. So we need this to get started. And then the next critical step is for you all, the marketers, to sit down and brainstorm hypotheses. And this is a fun exercise. What we're trying to do is ponder, using mostly common sense, what factors might lead to high lifetime value and low churn? What is the time to value for a new customer? How quickly do they realize value in the product? That's particular for product-led growth. What habits do we want these users to form quickly, and how can we measure those habits? What signals might indicate a real commitment to the product? What demographic, geographic, or firmographic data might also suggest interesting things? Maybe large organizations, maybe companies based in certain geographies. And what else would we love to know about these new users who were just acquired, particularly within a tight window right after their acquisition? And I'm going to suggest that 7 days is the right number. It could be less, it could be a little bit more. Let's move to this concept of time to value. The time to value is the time it takes for that new user to have that light bulb moment where they say, I get it. And I suppose that most of you all are using this tool right here, Calendly. Can I have a quick show of hands? Yeah, this is a great scheduling tool. And most of the time, the first time that you've encountered Calendly is by being an invited user. Not a primary user, but somebody sends you their Calendly link, and you click on it, and you open this scheduler, and your time to value is the time from opening that link to actually scheduling a meeting, and that could be done in probably less than a minute. That is a very, very short time to value. And a lot of you, at least with me, you see something like this and you think, wow, that's such a drop-dead simple product. And, well, why didn't I think of that, actually? This is time to value, and time to value can help get your juices flowing for hypothesis building. that can lead you to other data points and assumptions about what might predict lifetime value. Another great source of data that you can feed into the machine learning model, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is what's called zero-party data. And we all know what first-party data is, but zero-party data is data that is volunteered by the user during their conversion, in the conversion funnel itself. So when they sign up, you can ask them more information that might be helpful in predicting their lifetime value. We have a client that sells music software, and in their conversion funnel for the free trial, they ask users, what type of music do you make? So they want to get the genre. And what is your level of music making? So you choose whether you're a newbie or just a hobbyist or you're a pro music maker. And it turns out that these two factors, more than anything else, are the best predictors of lifetime value for this company. Hip-hop music makers and electronic music makers have an outsized lifetime value, and fairly obviously, people who are pros have a much higher lifetime value than people who are new to making music. We can also look at product usage data, in particular, how people are using the product in their first few days. They might be in a freemium experience or they might be in a free trial experience, but the people who are generally forming habits, habitual use of the product in the first few days are going to be your highest value users. So try to observe and hypothesize around what these signals might be. So now that we've done the hypothesis building, we're ready to orchestrate predicted lifetime value. And this is a three-party system. It's you, the marketer, it's a data engineer, and it's a data scientist. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that a lot of you don't have access to or manage directly a data scientist or a data engineer. And this is where things can get a little bit tricky. But there are three phases, and they need to go in this order. The first is to prep the data, to build a training data set that is ready for machine learning. And that process is led by a data engineer. And depending on what type of whiskey they like, that's usually a good first step. But this data engineer needs to help identify all the sources of data that support your hypotheses from the entire MarTech stack. Aggregate all that data into a single place, into a data warehouse, and then output that data into a table and create basically what is the training data that the machine learning will run on. And then the data engineer is done. He or she hands it off to the data scientist. The data scientist uses Python scripts, or there are other platforms as well, to run machine learning models. And this is data that lives in a warehouse like BigQuery. And this is, believe it or not, this is actually the fastest part of the process. It's also the most mystical for marketers, but this is usually 2 or 3 days once the data set is ready to run the machine learning models and have them ultimately spit out predicted lifetime values. And the last major step for the data scientist before he hands it off back to you, to the marketer, is to build rules and to apply the rules that the machine learning model has learned for predicted lifetime value and apply those rules back to the data sets in the BigQuery warehouse so that new users who come in, according to these rules, can be assigned values, predicted lifetime values. And the last step is to import the data. It sounds simple, but it can be a little bit tricky. You want to flow the data from BigQuery into Google Sheets and then import that back into Google Ads. This is pretty fun. This is where your job can really feel like you're really building the highest quality feed that Google's ever seen. And when this is all said and done, this is how, before we get to that, let's talk more about the data aggregation part. Data aggregation and useful data for this modeling can live in a lot of different places. It can live in the CRM. It can come from enriched third-party sources like Clearbit. It can be zero-party data that comes from the user as part of the conversion process. You've got that product usage data. You have payment data. You have business intelligence or analytics data. And this is not even all of it. But we've got to warehouse this data into a single place in order to basically make everything apples and apples, essentially. And the final output that the data engineer should hand to the data scientist is a table that looks like this. It has historic lifetime values, So in the first column, we've got all of our users with unique user IDs, and this is all of the historic customers that we know about. We have the lifetime value, the cumulative revenue generated from each one of those users, and then all the columns moving to the right from here are going to be an aggregation of our zero-party data, our enriched data, the revenue data that we have, any behavioral data, and any other types of data that we think could support our hypotheses for predicting lifetime value. This is a monster of a table, and this is what machine learning is going to gobble up and chew. And then when we get to the actual machine learning part, this is by far the geekiest slide in the whole deck. The model that we have had most success with is called the random forest model. And I'm going to try to describe this in layman's terms because I don't fully get it myself, even though it's been explained to me probably 20 times by now. But a random forest model is designed ultimately to bucket every new user that comes in into an array of different predicted lifetime values. And those are the buckets that we see here at the bottom. And in order to achieve this, it first randomizes the data, which is hence random. And the reason that it needs to randomize the data set is to strip out and eliminate all correlation, because correlation means bias. And biases that are already pre-built into the data will pollute the results, and we'll wind up with PLTVs that are too tight and with not a big enough range. So that's the random element, and the reason it's called random forest is because this is splitting data into multiple decision trees. So there are binary rules applied, yes, no, 1, 0, 1, 0. And as every one of those factors are being tested against, each of those different users are going down very unique paths and ultimately landing in a PLTV bucket. So when this is said and done, we might have 32 buckets, we might have 64 or 128, and it can go on and on exponentially from there. And you want a data set that has a broad range of values, because we want to understand the smallest value user all the way to the biggest value user, so that we can start focusing our marketing efforts on the bigger side of that spectrum, the more valuable side of that spectrum. So the random forest model is not the only model that we can use. There are other models like clustering and linear regression. But so far, this is the one we've had the most success with. And if you really want to geek out, there's a YouTube video link that I've dropped here on the slide. All right, when this is all said and done, this is how everything should work. This is the way that we are training Google. And when you think about it, it's kind of meta, because we're aggregating a training set of data in order to run machine learning, to take the outputs of that machine learning and use those outputs as training data for Google's machine learning, if you follow that. So it's machine learning on machine learning, our machine learning given for Google's machine learning. So imagine that Google Ads today acquires a user for $50 using value-based bidding. And right away we know things about that user from zero-party data and from enriched data. That user does stuff for the next 7 days, and we want to see what kind of signals and behavioral data we can get from those 7 days. And then that user who now is in the database with all of those different data points, because of the rules that have been written from our machine learning process, that new user is assigned a predicted lifetime value. And that gets sent from BigQuery into Google Sheets. And from Google Sheets, we are going to import that feed upload into Google Ads. And that is our imported offline conversion. It is a Google Sheet that automatically updates itself every 24 hours with all the new users who have just been acquired. And this completes this beautiful feedback loop where Google can see 7 days later how well it bid for that new user 7 days prior. In this case, if Google got us this user for $50 and the user is worth $1,500, you might say, bravo, it's really profitable. But you might also say, whoa, we could have dramatically underbid for that user. So the next time around, when Google sees a user who's similar to that, based on the gajillion signals that it has in real time, it will probably bid more aggressively for that user. And also, if it sees that it has overbid, then the next time around it's going to bid less aggressively and more conservatively for that user based on the predicted lifetime value. So this is the magic of value-based bidding. Here's where we are today with this. We are at about 85% predictive accuracy with the model that's the furthest ahead. And I want to caution you all to a few pitfalls here, which are that this is hard to sell clients on, because clients have to really believe that this is real. This is real value, because this is value that's being realized far out into the future. This is not cash in the bank today. So convincing clients is not easy. You have to get them to believe in the science first in order to believe that this number is real, and that they should stake ultimately all of their ad spend on this. And they should sell this story to their investors. Now let's talk about creative, and in particular performance creative, because this machine can work beautifully, but without fuel, it won't run. And performance creative is that fuel. And we know that creative has typically lived in a silo or in sometimes a separate agency. But I want to say that our goal here is to build iterative creative and to judge the creative only on performance and nothing else. In order to get started with this new approach to creative, we have to think about audience segmentation. And we have to think about the different ways we can segment audiences, first according to how Google allows it, so in-market and affinity, and remarketing audiences of website visitors and leads, and also building similar audiences is great. But let's also think more broadly about what we've just done with all the lifetime value predictions. And let's think about how we can segment our audiences on the basis of value first. Value first. And then let's build a creative process behind that. So if we come back to our output music software example, we saw that the two major factors that best predicted lifetime value were the level of experience that they had and the genre. So hip-hop pros by far were the most valuable, and electronic newbies in this matrix, this is a simplified version, they were worth the least. So right away we have a matrix that gives us 6 different audiences that we need to build creative for. And this is unique creative, and that creative now needs to go through a detailed process. And the process that I'm going to suggest works best for performance creative, high, rapid, iterative creative, is to first start with a broad concept and A/B test 2 very, very different polar opposite kind of concepts, and then start working your way towards a narrower and narrower set of tests. So first we want to A/B test concepts, and next we want to A/B test the creative that goes behind each of those concepts. And then finally we want to start playing around with the copy itself, headlines and copy for the winning creative. So identify the winning concept first. Next, identify the winning piece of creative. And last, find the winning copy that goes with that creative. And now we have our winning ad, and hopefully we get faster and faster at doing this, because we're going to take that winning ad, bring it right back to the starting line, and we're going to do the same process all over again. And I want to remind you all that our objective with performance creative is to judge only on performance, not by the opinion of the creative director or anyone else. And what do you all think about these 2 ads here? The one on the left or the one on the right? Which one would you kill and which one would you promote to the next stage? Well, this is, I guess no one's going to quickly volunteer. I think that we have different conversion rates. We have different CPAs, and you might already say, hey, why are we even talking about CPA anymore? Conversion rates are high, raw conversions are higher. So one gives us volume with less efficiency, and the other, the one on the left, gives us better efficiency but with less volume. So if we do this new approach of performance creative with value-based bidding, actually what we're trying to ask ourselves really is, which of these creatives are going to drive the most value for the business? And we should be able to measure the lifetime value all the way down to the creative level. Okay, what does this mean for you all in your jobs as performance marketers? I'm going to argue that your job is new again, and that your job probably has already changed more than most other jobs out there. And you've probably heard a lot of these themes throughout the conference, and you'll hear them tomorrow too, that yesterday's best practices are not necessarily the best practices of today. Complex campaign structures, complex account structures have given way to consolidated campaigns. Manual bidding has given way to automated bidding. SCAGs have given way to STAGs, single-themed ad groups. Exact match has given way to broad match. A/B copy testing has given way to responsive search ads. Last-click attribution has given way to data-driven attribution. One primary conversion at the bottom of the funnel has given way to multiple micro-conversions along the entire funnel. And universal analytics is also riding off into the sunset with cookies to be replaced by Google Analytics 4. And this also means that your core skill sets need to change with the changes in best practices. It used to be about what the platforms could output based on what you would do inside of the platform. But now it's really about what you as the marketer can bring to the platform. It's now an input-driven system. It's about choosing the right automated bidding solution based on your goals, not day trading and doing manual bidding. Keyword research is not that important anymore when you're going mostly broad match. You're giving discretion to the algorithm. Now it's more about custom audience creation using the processes we talked about here. Building data feeds and getting those data feeds to be higher and higher quality over time. And coming up with a set of micro conversions and assigning values to those micro conversions and obsessing about that. So it used to be about optimization inside of the platform. Today, it's about goal setting. It's about figuring out what can we bring into the platform to assist the platform in helping us achieve our goals. So we're moving from this environment where you all used to be a pilot or a co-pilot in this cockpit with 500 buttons and levers, and it was all about knowing which buttons to push or which levers to pull at just the right time to deliver those outputs. But now you're sitting in this vehicle, and you're not a pilot anymore. Maybe you're a bird feeder. Sorry for the bad joke there. You have to feed the flocks or the turtle doves or whatever, but you have to provide information to the machine that the machine doesn't have so that the machine can help you get where you want to go. It's about goal setting and strategizing now. And a new organizational mindset is very, very critical here. Typically, a large organization that's in a position to benefit from this has siloed these different functions: marketing, sales, engineering, finance, and legal. Marketing has traditionally been responsible for generating leads and then saying, there you go, sales. But now marketing needs to build customer acquisition programs that are based on value creation. They need to think, how can we build revenue pipeline for sales and be accountable to sales? Sales needs to partner with marketing and open up the CRM data and allow marketers to access that CRM data and other data that might be in marketing automation platforms, and allow the ad platforms to benefit from this data. Engineering, which is typically sat very separate from marketing and sales, they need to spend some of their time helping marketing by warehousing this data and getting it prepared for machine learning, and essentially building the plumbing for marketing. Finance needs to move a little bit away from their rigid planning mindsets, be a little bit more opportunistic, and have budgets that are flexible. When this works, and this will work, and we've seen it work, we need to unleash the spending. We can't cap spending when this works. It's just like shooting ourselves in the foot. Finance has to make that possible by being opportunistic. And finally, legal has to provide the regulatory framework to free the data, to free non-personally identifiable data so that everyone across the organization can benefit, in particular marketers and the Google Ads platform can benefit from using this data. So that means airtight data processing agreements and the right mindset that this data can be very, very useful and it needs to be used for marketing. So to recap, we're talking about bringing together the future of the platform, which is automation and value-based bidding, together with data science and machine learning and performance creative. Three different aspects that have typically lived very, very separate and distinct from one another now should come together under one roof. And if you all can be at the intersection of these three major functions, then that's how you're going to win in the cookieless future. Are you ready? Do you think you're ready for this? If you can answer these questions, then you probably are ready. Are you doing value-based bidding? Most of you are. Do you know lifetime value for your customer or your client? Are you warehousing data, or do you have the ability to warehouse data? Are you spending enough, and do you have enough data to make this work? I mean, this clearly is a big scale solution. So there are thresholds of volume of data that are required. Do you have the support of data engineers? That's a big one. Does your creative team have the agility to deliver the volume of creative at the speed that is necessary? And finally, most importantly, are you willing to be judged on value creation and no longer be judged on a cost basis of cost per lead or cost per acquisition? If you all feel that you're ready and maybe have some missing pieces, then I'd really like to talk to you, and I hope that we can connect on LinkedIn and have a further discussion, because we're looking for people to do this with. We're eager to get our hands on big data sets to prove this hypothesis, and we're in the early stages of this right now. So as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with this. Ask not what Google can bring to you. Ask what you can bring to Google. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. I think we probably have about 8.5 minutes for Q&A now. Thanks.
Thank you, Paris.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a couple of questions submitted via the app, and then we can move to the floor if anybody has any. So the first question is, if this works, could that change the way agencies charge for their services, and what are the risks and what are the rewards in doing so?
The way agencies charge for their service, so the agency fee structure. Interesting question. I have thought a little bit about this, and great question. I guess most of you out there would probably confer with me that the common agency pricing model is percent of ad spend. How many percent of ad spend agencies? Okay. I think that's still the predominant method. That's a cost-based method. It's a percentage of cost. I think if this works, meaning that you're able to do it successfully, sell it to your customer, and then ultimately move all of your ad spend to it, then you are creating very quantifiable and measurable value. And so maybe you can charge, maybe you can take a share of that value. Instead of taking a percentage of cost, maybe you can take that same percentage of value creation. But that does mean taking on more risk, but that means moving risk away from your client and towards you as the agency. But that's a really interesting question. And that could actually change the pricing model of a lot of performance agencies.
Okay.
Anything else?
There's more coming through. You've
Okay.
got questions as we're going. So second, what would be the minimum amount of user data customers you would need to run this PCLV strategy? And what are the threats and challenges smaller brands and markets would probably run into?
Okay, great. In order to run a machine learning model, you have to have loads of historical data. So most likely you're going to need thousands of, well, maybe not thousands, but several hundred historical users with value that's known. And that can help establish the lifetime value. Once that is in place, then you just really need the same level of conversion volume that makes value-based bidding work, which is, they say, what, 50 or so conversions per month, because you're just going to apply those rules to those conversions. Clearly, the bigger that you can make this, the better it's going to work. So I would say several hundred known customers with values, and then at least 50 conversions per month for value-based bidding going forward for the predictive part.
Okay. So someone said this model works great for Google, but not all the platforms or the majority of them don't have solutions like this. Mm-hmm. How should we go about it in non-Google channels?
Just wait. I don't know how this works outside of Google yet. I have to believe Facebook is going to be next with some other type of solution. But really, this most directly impacts Google because Google has this massive void which is going to be left when third-party cookies on Chrome go away. Facebook doesn't have that void. I don't know about LinkedIn or the other social media platforms. But this is really right now, today, a strategy for Google Ads.
Is the LTV model, oh, it's gone. Is the LTV model applicable to all business models? For example, could this work as a non-SaaS business?
I think it could. I believe it's most effective for revenue models where there are subscription-based or recurring revenue streams coming in over a long period of time. But this could also work for e-commerce, because if you're just optimizing for target ROAS against the first purchase, well then actually that's not the right way to do it either, because that is a new customer acquisition, and that customer will have a lifetime value as well of future purchases. So I do believe this can be applied also to e-commerce. But what we're focusing on most right now, because most of our clients are SaaS companies, is applying this to recurring revenue streams.